right, so here we are back. Stories we live by. And Will, you recently told me that one of your favorite movies, I said, hey, what are some of your favorite movies? And off the cuff, you just said, I really like Children of Men. I was like, Children of Men. I mean, I know the movie. What's the guy's name? Something or other. Clive Owen. Right, Clive Owen. Something about a baby and dystopian. Well, so I am curious to know why it is a favorite of yours, because we haven't talked about it yet. But I went back and watched it, and I kind of liked the movie. So I wanted to unpack it here in our channel and talk about the deep story and really the clash of worldviews that we see in this movie with some prevailing worldview ideas that have sprung up in our culture today. But before we get to that, why, Will, do you like Children of Men? Might have to do a little plot summary in order to get us there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, viewer discretion is advised if you go to watch this movie. There's a lot of violence, a lot of scary images, horrific images, language, birth, which is
parental guidance
fine.
is
Shouldn't be an
advised.
issue, but yes. Okay. So, So why I like this movie initially was because I thought it was shot beautifully. I thought it was directed beautifully, and I loved in film school, when I was going to film school, I loved the long takes because I appreciated the amount of rehearsal and technical achievement and amazing, camera movements to and just the whole thing, just knowing kind of what goes into it. I mean, even at a smaller level, just to know that all was just beautifully rehearsed, and it keeps you in it. So it was this sense of I'm here with Clive Owen because the camera has not cut. And oh my gosh, I am getting nervous the longer the camera's not cutting. I think the first scene is 9 minutes long or something like that. The first cut, 9 minutes into the movie, or 11 minutes.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, so see, this is the issue. I can go about this all day long, and then someone's like, I didn't even notice. I'm like, oh. So am I in the wrong profession?
What was the movie about? Right, yeah.
Okay, so
anyway, I was just kidding. You're viewing it as a craftsman, and I totally get it. And I thought that might be the case, knowing that you're a filmmaker.
But that was the initial. That's why I used the word initially, because in film school it was oh my gosh, they haven't cut in 11 minutes. This is amazing, right? But at the same time, I'm like, wait a minute, there's more to this movie. And then when I actually had to write a report on the movie, and I had to actually do research on it and compare it to other films, I'm like, wait a minute, this movie's actually really good and a masterpiece because of how it displays the display of innocence, the display of the hero's journey, but in a very interesting way, a hero making himself clean, like a hero being bringing him, stooping himself down, to the level, and also just the themes. I mean, how scary to think no children, and how the fighting stops when there's an innocent life. Oh my gosh, how amazingly beautiful that scene was. When the gunfire
We're going to come to that scene in a little bit, because that is probably the most memorable scene. So before we move too far in, though, let me just give a quick plot synopsis here. So Theo, our lead character, has become estranged from his wife following the death of their child from the flu many years earlier. And there's been a virus or something that's gone around, and every couple on the planet is unable to conceive, no children. They haven't had any kids for 18 years. And the opening sort of hook for the movie is the youngest child, who's 18 years old now, the youngest child of mankind, of humanity, has been killed in a riot or something like this. And so everybody's mourning and grieving. But throughout the movie, it's this dystopian world where there are no more kids. No more kids. And so people, there are these scenes where people are being encouraged to take the euthanasia kind of medicine. Hey, if you're hopeless, go ahead and take your life, right? Why sit around and mope when you can just weak out of existence, right? And there are wars being fought over territory, and Great Britain is the only stable geopolitical entity on the planet anymore. So everybody wants to come in, but you've got all this xenophobia and immigrants being thrown into ghettos and being just totally dehumanized. And but then the child, a woman comes along and I think her name is Key. She's pregnant, right? And oh my gosh, everybody's that finds out is really excited. Someone to use her for their purposes, and so Theo, though, he decides to take her on this journey to save her, to save the child, and hand him off to this mysterious organization called the Human Project, and we never do learn much about that. But the journey is fraught with peril, but he finally manages to hand her off, and his last dying, he dies from his wounds right as the ship comes up to take the mother and the baby away, and that's the end of the movie. So there's hope. Hope is born literally for humanity on the screen right in front of us. So that's the plot summary. And apologies if you've never seen the movie and you wanted to go see it.
Spoiler.
But that's it. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. He
retrograde.
Dies.
Yeah. So, but here's the question, right? Because many people today are reading polls and news reports that say you'll be happier if you don't worry about all that having kids thing. Your life would be more fulfilling and more purposeful and more meaningful if you just, focus on you. And what this movie is really exploring, the theme this movie is exploring is, will we be happier without a next generation to hand over to? And so that's the deep story here, Will. And we're gonna look at how basically this movie punches you in the face with the Whitney Houston song, "I believe the children of our future. Teach them well and let them." Sorry. I think this is 2 episodes in a row of song, and I should probably quit that. It
All
punches
good.
us in the
I
face.
Let it go.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So now, just for those of you who are watching, who I want to say, who have mixed feelings about families and children, maybe because you haven't been able to have kids, or this is an issue in your life, and or you have a difficult relationship with parents or children. We're looking at the big story, and we're looking at what is it that for us as the human race helps us to have hope. And this movie says that for us as human beings, there's something about the next generation and seeing the young come into the world that actually gives us hope and meaning. So whether you have kids or not, this movie is exploring that theme. So here's the question for us, Will. Whether you have kids or not, that's not so much the question that the movie is asking. The movie is asking the question, the deep story is saying, what is it that brings us hope? What is it that brings us a sense of purpose and value and meaning? And what is it that brings value to human life? And so that's the deep story that we want to explore, the deep story that Children of Men asks. Are we better off with or without Children of Men? So there we are. What do you think, Will? Where do you come at this?
First of all, that was a fantastic recap, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, well, so yeah, this idea of children being the hope of mankind, really, and just the parallels already to, well, first of all, just loving, it's not even forced, but it's just how the story is laid out, just the beautiful imagery and a beautiful symbolism behind the fact that a child would come, but through an immigrant. Not through this holy, on a hill, and like, you kind of see where I'm going here. It sounds like a very familiar story, right? It sounds like a familiar story to the hope of mankind coming in a lowly state, and a lot of people know him as Jesus. But yeah, so there's a hope to humanity, and basically, I think the movie was totally showing us that without that glimmer of hope, or without there being this like focused like passing to the next generation, or even having a next generation to pass to, that life is either insanely selfish and self-consuming, or it's not worth living, because it's every man for himself is what it feels like in this movie, especially. And when you're there and you're being exposed to this, the long takes, the long shots, when you're in the middle of this, you don't even want to be there. But when you're there, it's like every man for himself. Like you would run because you wouldn't even know where to go. You wouldn't know who to side with. You wouldn't even know who's good, who's bad, what's going on. It's kind of like chaos. And so that's why I think like the way that the movie is shot really does like lend to what it's talking about too a bit. But yeah, I will say that the movie's themes of the theme of like of hope for sure is there, and also just sacrifice. I mean, just through Theo's journey alone, him bringing himself to a point of sacrifice for the greater good. That's just something that we've seen a lot, but it's something that is kind of new in this film. Like this guy is a alcoholic in the beginning who uses alcohol, the very same alcohol, to deliver the hope of the world, to cleanse his hands. Like that's just not, it's just, again, not forced, but beautiful.
Yeah.
Because someone had to think about it and write it, but like, it's just not forced. It's just like lends itself. The theme of the story, the setting, everything, it just kind of just blends to tell this story because the setting is allowing the story to be told rather than we just picked something that looks cool and we picked a time in history that just is cool and explosions and wars and shooting and cool. People will like that, but there's more to it. It's really like, wait a minute, the setting is actually writing the story itself. So this is what would be happening, to a degree.
Yeah. You mentioned Jesus and the story of the birth of the hope of the world, and literally in this movie the child born to this immigrant mother, right, who's on this journey. We don't know where she comes from, and in the end we don't know where she ends up. But there's a funny scene, humorous scene, when Theo, the lead character, asks Key, the pregnant mother, so who's the father? And she goes, there is no father. And he goes, what? And she goes, I'm just kidding. I don't really know who the father is. It's like, oh, okay, we just want to make sure this is not like Jesus 2.0 here. But that scene is there. It gets mocked a little bit, but it's mocked in a kind of a disarming way, not in a denigrating the Christian narrative. So I want to. You mentioned the scene that I think is the most memorable in the film, but I found it to be memorable for two reasons. So you mentioned the one, which is there's this war going on, right? Battle, and they're caught up in it, and you don't know if they're going to get shot at any minute. The two lead characters, right? And there's a tank, and it's like shooting into the building that they're in, and the baby gets born. The baby's born at this point, starts crying. Everybody stops. Everything stops, and it's silence. And the only sound you hear for this long stretch of time is the baby crying as mother walks out through the crowd of soldiers and looking around, and everybody just sort of staring.
Yeah.
What does this scene do for you as you're watching it?
Well, it still even brings tears to my eyes even thinking about it, just because, you just even thinking about just how the innocence of a baby's cry, right, can bring basically anyone to their feet and even to their knees. Like it can bring even the worst kind of violence and just the worst kind of hatred. It can disarm it. Like going back to innocence and seeing true innocence, right? Because no one, there's a baby. Shh. That's crazy. But then taking that into a war, where people are like literally killing each other, and then there's a baby, look, and there's people that were in the middle. It even shows, I remember this. It was a long time since I've seen it, but I remember seeing people that as soon as the baby was within 10 feet or outside of 10 feet from them, they continued shooting again. They continued fighting.
So that's the second thing. Yeah.
It's just like
the passes beyond the range, and then the tank goes boom, and they're right back at it again. And which tells me something. A couple things. Number one, we have short memories, right? It's out of sight, out of mind. Babies, once the baby's out of sight, we're back to being inhuman again. But then number two, we need more of these, right? Like if it's not your kid that you're fighting for, but it's somebody else's kid, you're maybe not going to fight quite as strongly. But
just imagine if it was somebody, right.
How many wars would be ended if it was my kid whose life was on the line? I'm not fighting if my kid's life is on the line. And it's so easy to dehumanize and depersonalize the enemy. But if we have someone, let's say someone that we're longing to protect, some life that we're longing to preserve, and we recognize that dehumanizing them, what's to stop them from doing the same thing to us? And this really it challenges us to think that the value of humanity is not because they're our people, as opposed to their people, which this movie does a really nice job of showing all of these competing factions, right? And if you're not one of us, we're going to kill you.
Right.
And we're kind of living in a time where whoever they are, from whatever your perspective is, they're not human. They're evil. They're despicable. They need to go away. Whether they came from another country, whether they worship it differently, whether they, vote differently, they suck, and far worse than that. And this movie really points out, that's a losing battle for everybody. That's a losing battle for everybody.
Right. And what is it, like you said, what is it that's going to cause everyone to and stay that way? And then all of a sudden find this like unity. It's unity over true innocence, which like people I think are having trouble identifying what that is. And they are actually forced into this. They're like locked in this feeling that baby, I'm going to keep using this analogy, that baby traveling through is truth. That's going to get everybody to go, oh, look, it's the truth. Look, shh. It's never going to happen because everybody has identified their own truth. So now that you're rolling with your own, that's definitely not going to be what's flowing through there. So what is it that's flowing through there? Well, a psychiatrist would tell you some, like a very like, prescribed psychiatrist would be like, well, you got to be on pills. Like that's going to be your, and they have to be on pills too. So then you're both, But
what you're hinting at, Will, is that happiness is, personal happiness is not the ultimate good. That happiness, if my own happiness, like I can live my life, I can be whoever I want to be, and I can choose, and I can, prescribe if I'm not feeling well, I'm going to prescribe away my unhappiness or whatever. If there are too many people in my life, I'll just cut them out of my life. It always needs to be balanced with personal sacrifice. That personal happiness without personal sacrifice. So Theo, able to live his life his way, but he's not happy until he's able to work to preserve the life of a child he just met. And yes, so this is part of what it means to be human, is to see that in this case, happiness is not the only good. Also, being willing to sacrifice for the good and the happiness of another makes us truly human, makes us children of human beings, children of men, in the sense that, we have to kind of be in this together for each other as a human collective. And I don't mean that in a kind of socio-political sense. I just mean in the sense that, like, if once we start devaluing other human beings, we slide into bad, murky waters. So yes,
and then, so we need a truly then valuable, like, or a human being of some sort to place true value on. Which in this movie, it's like, well, that's a newly born baby is probably going to be about as innocent as you get. To then place this like, oh, we can't be doing this around this innocence. You can't be doing that. Like, and unfortunately, I think, well, I don't want to go too far, but just in the idea of like, that is the truest form of innocence. I mean, to a degree. And unfortunately, I think we're living in a society now that has become more and more selfish. In even just their choices as far as like, even having a baby,
my
choice is to do A, B, or C, or like or what to do with that life, or what to it can it just travels so much into selfishness. And like you said, the movie shows us beautifully how it kind of gets us nowhere at the end of the day.
Yes, it gets us worse than nowhere. It gets us back in chaos and all the violent elements. They were framed in this understanding that there is no hope and that there's no value placed on life. And really, our sense of what is beautiful and what is good in the world has just completely been lost. And it's one person being inhuman to another. That is what's at stake here for
and
us.
I'm obviously always gonna tear up when Michael Caine, unfortunately, I love him.
Yeah,
in that movie.
That's
finger.
Brutal.
That guy. Yeah, it's brutal because it's what he says.
Not the pull my finger part, but what comes after. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Again, okay, yeah, he's drugged out of his mind. Fine. He smokes a lot of weed, whatever. Doesn't matter. It's again another person that like had this like kind of innocence to them, just a helper, someone who's willing to help, someone who's willing to just, it's cool, man. Don't, no worries. And then Clive Owen has to watch him be executed by, again, people that just have devalued life entirely. The guy's making a joke, like, to the guy who's about to kill him. Like, he's that kind of guy. And then he has to die, like, in cold blood. It's just, but again, it's all for this bigger story because it's a selfless act.
He's making a sacrifice too. That's right.
And it's amazing to watch that the more selfless acts that happen through this movie, the further the plot advances towards hope. Because Jasper's one of them, but then the other guy who, you're a fascist pig. That guy. That was, I forget his name, but that was the password to get into the right.
Yes.
And he helped to a degree too. There was like a turning point for him where he sort of helped advance the story too because of a selfless, but then unfortunately he got it. But these selfless acts advancing the story. But still, even in those first decisions of like, okay, he is going to help a little bit. This is okay. A second of selflessness, advances towards hope. So just in the grander picture, but.
All right, so as we wrap up, we want to encourage you, the viewer, hit the like button if you like the video, if you like the content, and want to see more of this as we look at the stories we live by, the stories that play out in front of us on the screen or in the literature that we read. Subscribe if you want to see more, obviously, content coming down the pipe. And in the comments, have you seen the movie? And what did you notice? What story were you paying attention to? Maybe you just pay attention to how a movie makes you feel. And if you feel good, you say, hey, that was a great movie. Or if it tells a compelling story. So what is it that really makes you enjoy a movie? Maybe it's the craft, the filmography, and the way that shots are framed and cut. But let us know. But also, I'm curious to know, how have you seen sacrifice play out in your life, whether your sacrifices or the sacrifices of others that have led to good in your life or in the lives of others? So in other words, you're making sacrifices for others. Do you see the good it produces in their lives? Others making sacrifices for you. Do you see the good that comes out? Life is obviously much more than personal fulfillment and the pursuit of happiness for me, but also balancing my own interests and my own pursuits with what's good for you and for your people and for your community, your family. And that's really what makes us human in the end. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in our next episode.